everybody, welcome to Invest in Your Health, where we're focusing on your biggest asset, which is your health. Our expert today is Jeremy Sullivan. He is going to be talking to us a lot about spiritual health today. And I want to thank First Community Bank for the opportunity that we get to chat with you guys and chat with our experts. So I'm really excited to learn a lot from Jeremy today. Jeremy is a pastor at a local church, Compass, and Jeremy received his Master's of Divinity at Mid-America in Memphis. He's been a pastor for several years here. And Jeremy, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I've been at Compass for about 6.5 years. Prior to that, I planted a church in Jonesboro and served another church in Northeast Arkansas. So I've been doing pastoral ministry for about 18 years now, something like that. I grew up in this area, though. I grew up about 40 minutes from here, a little town called Calamine. Went to school at Cave City. Have a wife, 2 kids.
I'd say that's more than enough to call yourself an expert in this.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I've been calling myself that for years.
Perfect. Well, what a blessing. We've been calling you that for at least the last minute or two,
Yeah.
so that should work out nicely for us. We have you here as an expert in spiritual health. So why is spiritual health important, just like heart health or reproductive health or dental health?
Spiritual health is important because everybody is spiritual. Sometimes people say things like, well, I'm a spiritual person, or I'm not a very spiritual person. But the truth of the matter is all of us are spiritual. A human being is made up of physical parts and non-physical parts. When you get into that non-physical parts category, you could divide that up some different ways, but I think the easiest way to divide it up would be to say that a person is physical, so you have your hardware. A person is mental, you have cognition and thinking and things like that. And a person is spiritual. A human being is this complex organism comprised of those 3 parts. Every person has this spiritual side to them. And so if health is well-being, just as your body can be physically well or not physically well, your spiritual aspect, your inner life can be well or not well. There's an old hymn that says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, or when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Things like peace and sorrow, those are spiritual concepts, not physical things we can get a hold of, but immaterial spiritual things. And we all know those things are true for us. We all know that we can have peace or we can have sorrow. We can be content or we can live with discontent. All of those are spiritual questions. So the idea of spiritual health is when it comes to those sort of things, I'm well there. So it's important because everybody lives there.
Well, that makes total sense. And it kind of frames up the next question, which is, in times like these, what do you recommend to our listeners as far as spiritual health goes? What are some things they can do while they're at home more? You know, their kids are at home more, they're at home more, maybe working from home. What are some things they could do to improve their spiritual health?
Well, I think maybe an important distinction to make going into the question is to realize that we can't just separate things out into the physical or the spiritual or the mental. We know that the person's life kind of all flows together. So the things you do physically actually can affect you spiritually. The things you do mentally affect you spiritually. So the way you would affect your spiritual health is often through the physical and mental things you do, through the stuff you do with your body. A helpful way to think of it is like this. The things you do something to you. Everything you do does something to you. Everything you put in does something to you. In the same way that the stuff you eat and drink affects your physical body, the stuff you dwell on, the stuff you think about, the stuff you meditate on, the stuff you look to for your contentment, all that stuff affects your spirit. So the first place to start with sort of evaluating your spiritual health would just be asking, what am I taking in? What am I putting into myself? Particularly during this time when we're at home a lot, if we have extra time on our hands, it's easy to want to pass that time by binging on Netflix or scrolling through social media for the 1,000th time today, and all of that stuff does something to us. So start there just by looking at what am I taking in? Evaluate that stuff. If I were to call somebody, call different people 3 hours a week, that would affect me. You know, I'm going to call and check on people and see how they're doing. if I did that every single week, it would do something to me. If I served other people every single week, if I volunteered at a soup kitchen or something like that, it would do something to me. In the same way, if I am pouring like 20 hours a week of Netflix into me, or social media into me, or news story on top of news story on top of news story about politics into me, it's going to do something to me. So ask, what am I taking in? Secondly, put in some good things. So pray with your family. That's a good place to start with your spiritual health. If you don't know where to start with prayer, it's a conversation like this, right? We believe prayer is a conversation with God, so just start there, start talking to the Lord. Think about what you worship. Everybody worships something. To worship something is really just to give it value. Look at your life and ask, what am I giving a lot of value in my life to? Examine that, and then begin to worship God instead. See His value, sing to Him, seek Him through His Word, things like that. I think those are good places for a family to start working on their spiritual health.
When you get into specific decisions you make on a daily basis, did you kind of say help mold who you are? What are some of the habits you recommend in getting into when people have a little bit more time at their home?
Yeah. Historically, the things that affect our spiritual health positively have been referred to as spiritual disciplines. So some daily rhythms that a person can engage in to affect their spiritual health positively would be things like prayer, worship, reflection, things like that. So what that looks like in a person's life, what it can look like in my life, is in the morning when I wake up, the first thing I try to do is just begin the day in prayer. Prayer is a daily rhythm. Reflection is another good daily rhythm. I think we live in such a fast-paced society, and a society that fills every minute with something. We live in a time that's so full that we rarely reflect on things. We're constantly taking information in, but rarely reflecting on the information we've taken in. So a good habit to develop each day would be to, perhaps at the end of the day, look back over your day and ask the question, what helped me today? What hurt me today? When did I feel like the best version of myself? Did I do or say anything today that I regret now? Did I act in any way today that I would look at and think that's not who I want to be? So some daily time of reflection is super helpful, I think. Even our children, who we love very much, if we're not used to being around them all the time, we aren't necessarily equipped to be around them all the time. You know what I mean? I saw this little meme the other day of a guy grilling on his back deck, and his kid is dribbling a basketball, and he turns around and takes the ball and he punts it across the yard. And I sent it to my wife, and I said, I kind of feel this right now. And my son watched the video with her, and he said, I bet I could get Dad to do this. So how do you manage that? One, give grace to one another. Apologize frequently. This is something I've done this week numerous times. My son in particular, I just had to apologize to him for something. I told him I'm sorry that the way I acted was wrong, and I was overreacting, and apologize. Take a break. Have them go out into the yard if you live in a place where that's safe to do, and get a little time away from them. And then remember, if you're home with your kids, they are kids. They're not adults. Their mission in life is not to bother you. It's just they're children, and that's what they do. So be patient with them. Forgive, ask for forgiveness, and have fun too. We live in such a serious time right now where there's a lot to think about and be afraid of. Sometimes we can forget to have fun. Do fun things together and lighten the mood some too.
So it's okay to put yourself in timeout sometimes as well.
It's not just okay, it's a good idea.
Okay, well, what a blessing. Thanks everybody for watching this. Next episodes we're going to be focusing on heart health, reproductive health, digestive health. And thanks again for First Community Bank for letting us all come chat today. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to invest in your health. Have a great day.